Hey everyone, it's Jana from The Last Stitch. Are you struggling when you're sewing stretchy knits to keep them in check without stretching out and creating those wobbly, annoying seams, especially if you're using just your regular sewing machine? Well, I hear you. The good thing is that there is a secret weapon to fix a lot of those issues, and what that is, you might wonder. Well, it's clear elastic. I'm sure many of you are already familiar with this, but if you're not, what clear elastic is it's a semi-transparent, very lightweight elastic that has great stretch and great recovery. And in today's video, I want to share with you 5 of my favorite ways of using clear elastic for sewing knits. And those are of course useful both for any type of stretchy knit project, and naturally also if you're sewing activewear or doing swimwear. So without further ado, let's start with my favorite ways of using clear elastic. And the thing that I use clear elastic the most for is to stabilize shoulder seams on knit fabrics, because since the fabric is stretchy and also cut on the diagonal, stretch fabric has a tendency of expanding when you're sewing together a shoulder seam, which is not fun unless oversized shoulder is the look that you're going for. And this is especially prevalent if you're using a regular sewing machine. I'm sure many of you already experienced this, which is why you need to have some type of method to stabilize the shoulder seam. And my favorite is to use clear elastic, and the reason for that is that it has a very narrow width, so you can just hide it inside this seam allowance. And secondly, it's not very bulky, and thirdly, it keeps the stretch of the shoulder, because some of the methods you see in sewing books and such, they actually remove the stretch of the shoulder, which you don't really want. You want to keep the stretch, but you also want to keep it from growing out. And if this sounds like, what are you talking about? Well, I do recommend that you check out my video on how to stabilize shoulder seams on knit fabric, because in that video I go in depth and show you step by step how to attach clear elastic in the shoulder seams, and also some other suggestions on how to stabilize shoulder. So after this video, I highly recommend that you check out that video too to learn even more about this. Another area that can cause some grief is when you are sewing necklines on stretchy knits. They do have a tendency to grow, but again, clear elastic can come to the rescue. So the advantage of using clear elastic like I've done on this sample is that it prevents the neckline from growing out, but it keeps the stretch. And since I said clear elastic is such a thin material, it doesn't really add much bulk or either. So perhaps you're curious now on how I do this. Well, it's actually very simple. So I attach the clear elastic on the reverse side of the fabric, just using a regular zigzag stitch. If you're using a sewing machine, I just shape that clear elastic around the neckline, and once I've attached the elastic, I fold it over like this, and then I stitch a second time, again using maybe a zigzag stitch, a twin needle, a cover stitch machine. All those things work really, really well. And the result is, as I said, a neckline that will keep its shape with the magic use of clear elastic. And of course, you're probably already thinking, yeah, maybe I could use this also for sleeve opening on a leotard, or maybe leg openings on a swimsuit. Of course you can. Clear elastic is super useful for all those things as well. Just make sure that it's chlorine resistant if you're using it for swimwear, but I think that many clear elastic, even most clear elastic, are actually quite durable for swimming as well. And I also showed this method step by step in my book Sewing Activewear, using just a regular sewing machine if you want to learn more about this particular technique. Another great way of using clear elastic, which I see a lot in ready-to-wear garments, but I don't see many home sewers using it, is to create gathers on knit fabric. So for instance, this ready-to-wear swimsuit has these beautiful, beautiful gathers at the front bodice. See? And if you stretch the fabric out, it has stretch. So it's not stiff gathers. And you probably already guessed what the secret trick is. Well, it's clear elastic. So what you do is you take a piece of clear elastic and you mark the length of the finished garment that is with the gathers like pulled together, right? So this is the distance, for instance, that's of the finished garment. And then You place the fabric where you want to create the gathers, and of course that fabric will be much longer because, well, gathers, right? But when you attach this, you just stretch out the clear elastic so that it turns into the same length of the fabric. You attach the elastic to the fabric, and then when you release the elastic, boom, it reverts to its original shape, and you have beautiful even gathers with the stretch intact. It's absolutely genius. So you can, of course, as I showed you here, use it for swimwear. I like to use it for creating gathers on sleeves. Any area where you're having gathers on a garment and you want to keep the stretch, I should highly recommend you use clear elastic. Of course, make sure that the clear elastic is hidden or folded back so that the clear elastic won't rub your skin. So for instance, in a swimwear, the clear elastic is hidden inside the lining. If you're adding clear elastic at the shoulder, make sure that it's on the seam that will press away from the skin, because clear elastic isn't the most wonderful sensation to the skin, which is why it's always important to place the clear elastic on the side that will face the fabric and not your skin when you're pressing the seam. Another area where clear elastic has great functionality is when you're sewing like leggings waistband, hot pants waistband, skirt waistband, any place where you have a knit waistband like this that is form-fitting, because you need to stabilize it in some way, because if you skip that step, there's a risk that the pants will fall off from you very, very shortly. And that is why you usually add some type of elastic inside the seam allowance. For instance, here you can see it's the white traditional elastic, and that is great. But if you would switch to clear elastic instead, the benefit is that the clear elastic is much, much thinner. So you will have less bulk at the waist there, which is always a great thing, right? And again, I show how to add clear elastic to a waistband in my book Sewing Activewear. I use a regular sewing machine there. So again, you can see the clear elastic is such a great way of stabilizing knit fabrics, even if you don't have a serger. So I highly recommend you check that out as well. But the principle is you use it just the same way as you would use regular white knitted elastic. It has the same function, but with the added bonus of that it's much, much thinner and gives the absolute same stability, perhaps even more, to be honest. Sometimes, because those knitted elastic has a tendency of stretching out, but I find the clear elastic, if you get the good ones, they retain and have, its shape has great recovery. So it can actually be a really, really great option to try this instead if you don't like using the regular elastic. And another way of using clear elastic that I don't think I see that many people share, but it's such a great thing, so I really want to share with you guys, and that is when you're, for instance, sewing a dress in a knit fabric, you might notice if that has a horizontal seam that ties together the bodice with the skirt, you might sometimes get the seam will drop a little bit, and that's not strange, because usually you're working with those 4-way stretch fabric, and of course, the seam will be weighted down by the weight of the skirt fabric, and also you might get a little bit stretched out, and it doesn't exactly look the way you wanted it to. But again, clear elastic will solve this issue, and I'm going to show you how. Here I have a wrap dress which has a seam at the waist, and this is absolutely 100% straight, and the reason for that is that when I sew the upper and the lower part of this dress together, I actually inserted clear elastic inside the seam allowance, and this gives it so much stability. And as I said, because clear elastic is such a non-bulky notion, so the only thing to remember again is that you place the elastic on that side of the seam that will press towards the fabric, so you don't have that clear elastic rubbing your skin. But if you really want to get that professional finish on your knit garments, why not trying to use clear elastic in that horizontal seam? I love it. I absolutely love it. And even some sergers, for instance, have attachment where you can sew together both the elastic and the seam at the same time. For instance, my Baby Lock has that. Perhaps there could be an option to explore. Maybe there are even those for a sewing machine. I'm not familiar with that, but that would be really useful to know. So if you have any tip on that, again, please share in the comment section. So hopefully I have turned you into clear elastic convert if you weren't one before watching this video. Now I would really like to know if you have any other ways and suggestions on using clear elastic, and also do you have any brand recommendation, because it can be hard sometimes to get the good quality stuff. So if you have any recommendation on what to look for, please share in the comment section. And of course, thank you so much for watching. Stitch safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.